Singing for over 50 years from Augusta with love, the Swanee Quintet, and we're proud to be a part of a service with them today down in Elkton, Maryland. We have with us Brother Charlie Barnwell, the manager of the Swanees, and let us talk to him right now. Brother Barnwell, good to be with you.
Good to be here, Linwood. How you doing?
Doing great. We waited a long time for this. Swanee Quintet, a lot of quartets during the early years were named after their church, like the Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, where the Soul Stirrers came with the Pleasant Grove Juniors. How about the Swanees?
Well, the Swanees started at the Mount Canaan Baptist Church in Augusta, Georgia. The Swanee Quintet wasn't the first name that we had.
That's what I was going to ask you. What was the first name?
The Hallelujah Gospel Singers. And a radio station, WGAC, way back in the early 40s, they changed it to the Swanee Quintet. They thought about the Swanee River, you know?
Yeah.
You know, we got a Swanee, Georgia there.
Right.
In Georgia. And so they changed our name to the Swanee Quintet.
So that's almost like the Harmony Kings, which was changed by Swan Bakery to the Swan Silvertone.
That's correct. That happened in Knoxville, Tennessee, way back.
That's
but
right.
during the time they were singing, we were singing for Freedman Jewelry, a big jewelry company, there in Augusta, Georgia. We did this for about 13 years every day. 6:15 every evening, and we broadcast every evening to later years the Fairfield Four from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm sure you heard of them.
Right.
They heard of the Swanee Quintet, and so they took us under their arms, and the Fairfield Four got us started, really.
So you're in Georgia now with the Swanee Quintet. Fairfield Four is in Tennessee. Those states are not next to each other. How do they hear about the Swanees?
Well, they're next to each other, though. Georgia and Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, Georgia run out from Chattanooga, you know.
Okay,
so growing up. But how the Fairfield Four heard of the Swanee Quintet? Later years, when the Pilgrim Travelers got hurt in the Carlo Turner, though, out of California, got hurt in the car wreck.
Carlo Turner?
Yeah, Carlo Turner with the Pilgrim Travelers out of California. And they're making their first tour to the east. And they had a bad car accident. And Fairfield Four wanted somebody to go along with them, help make that tour out. And so we went along with the Fairfield Four about a month. And that's how the Swanee Quintet got it made, because we used to broadcast over WLAC.
So that broadcast went into Tennessee.
That's right.
In the beginning, Mr. Barnwell, if you were the Hallelujah Gospel Singers, right?
Yes.
In the beginning.
That's correct.
How many people were in that group?
Well, with the Hallelujah Gospel Singers, Big Red didn't come in until a year later after the name was changed. But we had people like Reverend Willingham, Reverend Shepherd, a young man, Oscar Bain. And well, they stayed with us until the early 50s, and then Big Red came in.
When did the Swanee Quintet actually make their first appearance, first public appearance?
First public appearance?
What year was that?
Well, it was about 47.
47. So it was after the war.
That's right. That's correct.
So you came along after the Birds and after the Soul Stirrers.
That's correct. Well, we were singing, but we were singing locally.
Locally.
Yeah, you know,
and you weren't Swanees, you were Hallelujah.
That's correct.
You joined up with the Fairfield Four.
That's correct.
You go on a tour.
We went on a tour, and then we met.
Was this your first time out of Georgia?
That's correct. And then we met after joining the Fairfield Four on tour. Then we met the Spirit of Memphis Quartet, Silas Steele out of Memphis, Tennessee.
Now, Silas Steele at one time sang with the Blue Jays.
That's correct.
Okay.
Sang with the Blue Jays.
Right.
And I remember the Soproco Gospel Singers too, out of New Orleans, Louisiana.
What was their name?
Soproco. And Reverend Thomas left the Soproco. Reverend Thomas left the Soproco and joined the Fairfield Four.
Was it really four of them?
There were four of them.
All right. Mr. McCrae.
Yeah. Sam McCrae and Thomas. Let's see. Love.
Willie Love?
Willie Love. He came in later years, you know, with the Fairfield Four. And had the bass singer with Dickie Freeman. That's when I became to remember the Fairfield Four.
They, in the past 4 years, were at Carnegie Hall, Fairfield Four.
Yeah, I know. We did a thing with them on the Bobby Jones special with the Fairfield Four.
Now, they're not still singing today, are they?
Yes, they're
Somebody's passed.
Reverend McCrae passed, but
okay.
the Fairfield Four is still singing.
Are they?
Yeah, you know, by appointment, you know,
okay.
like that.
So we're on tour now with the Fairfield Four, and you start traveling outside of Georgia.
That's correct.
What were they charging for admission back then?
Well, Swanee Quintet, when we sang locally, 15 cents in advance and 25 cents at the door.
All right, so it was 10 cents when JJ started, so it went up to 15 cents by the time
the Swanee. That's correct.
But you stayed busy, didn't you?
We stayed busy. We booked every night when we had this radio broadcast. So we had to go, South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama, and Tennessee. And later years, back in 1957, little Johnny Jones came to the group. And
did he replace someone?
No, not exactly.
And before he came, excuse me, before he came, who was there?
Reverend Shepherd. Reverend
Willingham. The gentleman who passed.
Rufus Washington.
Okay, so it was just basically the four of them.
That's right, and William Crawford, which was the guitar player.
Okay.
We called him Pee Wee.
Right, I remember him.
Then Reverend Shepherd, he left back in about 56. Then little Johnny Jones came in.
Where'd you find Johnny Jones?
Right in Augusta, Georgia.
Okay.
Yes.
Did he follow around after you and wanted to sing with you?
Yes, well, he was doing the background thing for the late Madam Eleanor Garvin Cook.
He was one of her sons. What were they?
Singing sons.
Singing sons. He was one of them?
He was one of them. And I tell you who else was one of them. Willie Banks, the Messenger, Little Shot with the violin there. All those were singing sons.
All big.
So Johnny thought he wanted to get out of the background and come sing lead. And so we took Johnny in and brought him into Congy Hall in 1957.
Weren't you there with... Was it Miss Ward, Cloud Ward?
Cloud Ward.
That's right.
Miss Ward.
Okay.
And the Gospel Harmonists.
Right.
J.J. following the Souls there.
Right.
But during that time, Johnny Taylor was with the Souls there. And Paul Foster.
All right. This was after Sam had left.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, Johnny comes in. How old was Johnny?
Johnny was 16 years old when he came to Swanee Quintet.
And his parents let him come?
That's correct. They trusted the Swanee Quintet.
When we spoke to JJ, he told me that Johnny sang with them for a while after Sam left.
Yeah, that's what he did. For a while. The Souls were having problems, with the lead staff. Yeah. And so Johnny joined them. But he still came on back home to the Swanee Quintet.
Then I found out that, and I just was playing a record by the Swanees not too long ago, and I know back in those days, singers would switch and go sing with another group, record another group. I was playing something, got a hold of me, and I thought it was Willingham in the second part. It sounds now like it's June Chief.
That's Reverend Junior Six. That's what it was.
How did he get with the Swanees?
Well, he was traveling with us during that time.
What happened to the Nightingales?
He was still with the Nightingale. Reverend Junior Chief was still with the Nightingale, so...
He was also with the Soul Stirrers for a while.
With the Soul Stirrers, and with the Mississippi Blind Boys also.
Was there a comradeship there, or was there any... Did he get mad at somebody and say, well, I'm going to sing with so-and-so this week?
No, it wasn't like that, huh?
Because JJ said Johnny couldn't stay with them because Johnny had to be home. He said Swanees would only go out during the weekend, but they'd be back home.
That's correct. Well, that's what happened to Johnny. And during that time, when Johnny first came to the Swanee Quintet, we had a time check for him to go to bed. Everything else like that, Those were the things, because he was young.
Yeah, and you are responsible. His parents left you in his charge. Yeah.
His father was a minister, and he told Big Red and myself and Floyd. We had another young man I was managing then with Floyd Boucher. And he told him, you are responsible for him. You just like a father family. And so, those were the years, the good old years too also.
So Johnny comes along with the Swanees.
That's right.
You really start traveling more. You're making a lot of great... What was your very first recording that you can remember?
Well, the first recording was Walking the Light. And then the next, the one that got the Swanee Quintet on the road was Sit Down Service. Sit down and rest a little while.
Okay, now, didn't someone else do that too?
No, we first came out with it slowly. But Gospel Airs came out.
Gospel Airs,
Children.
Okay, Sit Down Children, right.
Later years,
right.
And then back in 66, when we started traveling with James Brown. You remember that?
Yeah, I was getting ready to ask you about that. Yeah. You, all these years, I guess, stayed with Nashville from the beginning, weren't you?
We were with Nashville. We stayed with Nashville. Around 30,
my God, it's been 30-some years you were with Nashville. Then I got this record. We knew that you were on tour with James Brown. Then I got this record, Try Me, Father, which was like James Brown. I can't think.
That's the Spirit.
Yeah, that's the Spirit with Reverend Willingham, right?
That's right. That was on King record.
That was on King. That was James Brown's. It wasn't his label, though.
No,
he was part of King.
Part of King, though.
King had done some gospel earlier than that, though. I had some old records on gospel on King.
I think King did the Blue Jays of Heaven and Gospel.
Yeah, and the Swans. I got a record, an album by the Swans, 1930 something. Right. It's on King.
On King's label. But King was a big label in Cincinnati.
But you didn't do an album. You just did those two songs.
Those two songs. That's what we did.
You're both from Augusta. James Brown's from Augusta. You're from Augusta. Yes, is that how you got together?
No, it wasn't exactly like that. I remember James. But Swanee was saying way before James was. I remember James used to shine shoes on the corner of 10th and Broad Street in Augusta.
Yeah.